MTG gets to double down here on her growing support of this sort of post-party populist cult that's anti-Trump because of his corruption and his relation to the Epstein class or whatever. And I think there's a lot to learn from this video, not just in like what's happening in MAGA, but also the way the Democratic Party is moving. So let's just get to it.
There's also a new report out today, an extensive report that's in the New York Times, and it's based on Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan's upcoming new book that's about to be published called Regime Change. And they write in this new report today about how the release of the Epstein files, debating over how to handle Jeffrey Epstein, basically paralyzed the White House. And there were meetings in the Situation Room even where obviously, of the utmost national security concern, meetings pertaining to that happened. When you read that and you hear that the president's team, the vice president, the chief of staff, everyone's meeting inside the sit room about Jeffrey Epstein, what does it tell you about how they viewed that story?
Well, unfortunately, that's not new news to me. Unfortunately, that was something that I lived through. I watched the Speaker of the House shut down the government for and keep the House completely out of session for 8 weeks in the fall of 2025, simply because he was under orders of the president and his team not to do anything in the House of Representatives because they were doing everything they could do to stop that resolution from passing the House. The same resolution.
And again, the obvious reason is that before anything about the grand conspiracies related to Epstein, it just looks bad for Trump because he's clearly heavily implicated in being an associate of Epstein. But this goes into the issue of using these attacks just in any respect. The whole populist gambit of using this sort of appeal to conspiracy and grand narratives is that if you're implicated in those narratives or if they cut against your goals, it's going to be horrible for you if it's ever litigated, if it's ever investigated, especially by your own party. And there's a point where that breaks, and this was that example of what broke because of Pam Bondi's insistence on doubling down on the narrative and not thinking that they would see it through.
That I signed the discharge petition to force to a vote on the floor. I'm not surprised by this news, Caitlin, because I also had a very uncomfortable phone call.
And why did MTG force this? Well, the answer, I think, is because she sees a party post-Trump. She thinks that there's going to be this populist base that Trump mobilized in the last decade, that they're going to continue on and they're going to look for leadership that is genuinely populist in the absence of Trump. Now, I still have never heard an answer for why Trump, who is effectively an anti-populist in his own life and his own policy, yet is, exclusively laundering the populist credibility or the populist base to win elections. I would just wonder, why is it that when Trump goes away, they won't just find a new Trump? Why is it that they would actually follow a populist candidate who's a true believer like MTG? But for whatever reason, she thinks those people are going to be in droves looking for people like her who are true believers. So that's why she's doubling down on them and not Trump.
With the president before the release of the Epstein files, where he told me that his friends would get hurt if the files were released, and I'll never forget that. I'll also never forget the text message he sent me when I told him that my son's life was being threatened because he was calling me a traitor because I fought to release the Epstein files, where he told me that I deserved it. And so this doesn't shock me.
And this just goes to how bad of a politician Trump is, where MTG is a really important person for him just in terms of getting people mobilized in the House. Losing her is losing a insanely useful ally, but Trump is ego first. It's kind of impressive. Again, I call him America's Buddha for that reason. It really is just all about himself, and he will sacrifice everything to protect the audacity of his ego. It's impressive in that respect.
That his team was paralyzed, but I tell you what it is, listen, unforgivable. We're talking about pedophiles and rapists of the elite class of people that never get held accountable for anything. So if they were paralyzed and scared and didn't know what to do about releasing the Epstein files, these people are absolutely absurd. They don't deserve the American people's trust. As a matter of fact, we should consider them as they should be considered traitors. They're traitors. The ones that refuse to release the Epstein files, want to cover up for pedophiles and rapists and all sorts of disgusting things in these files.
No matter how revolting MTG is as a person and a politician in terms of her policy, this is just, it's so smart, like this respect, where if you're going to break away from Trump, this is how you do it. You move towards a new coalition that is actually oriented around the arguments you're making, because this is what happens. When you leave a group, you have to shake it up. You have to find new allies, and it's not worth trying to play footsies with people who you really do think are traitors, or you've positioned yourself to say they are traitors. A lot of people will, try to go half and half. Look at Cornyn, who's still being careful about how he talks about Trump, even after being obliterated by him. MTG knows it's all or nothing with this kind of stuff, which is smart. You can't knock that.
For the traitors to the American people, and they should be ashamed of themselves.
I mean, this report basically says it was the president who didn't want anything released. Are you saying that that applies to the president himself?
I'm saying exactly that. He told me on the phone that his friends would get hurt.
That is
and
true.
That's why he's against releasing the Epstein files. And I think we've seen a lot of that dribble out. So, yeah, it all matches. It completely adds up. From the phone call that I had with the president to this report that is coming out, it totally, it all lines up.
I mean, it's pretty remarkable to hear you say that you think the president is a traitor.
What is remarkable to me is that this administration, people...
Again, I understand the frame, but it's not remarkable. These people are populists, first and foremost. Trump is, a lame duck president at this point. There's no more use to get out of him. If he's not going to play ball with them, if he's not going to give at all and help develop their coalition so that they have strength through him and through his political project when he's, out of office, then what's the point? It does make sense to jump ship. Now, again, I don't trust in the base really being there post-Trump. But, if you're going to try to create a new path right now, this is the way you do it. It's not remarkable.
That we voted for, demanding transparency, the man that campaigned all over the country, claiming that he would be the one to drain. Many people have turned and said, oh, she's a Democrat now. I'm not a Democrat. Nothing changed about my views. I'm unapologetically America first. As a matter of fact, I've taken off.
When she says she's not a Democrat, she's not lying, and it's in a really important way, because what she's referring to is the system that existed prior to Trump and really, at least I think since the mid 20th century, which is that it wasn't that you were, voting for two sides of the same coin, but rather you had two party choices that would be willing to work together but had principal differences. The change in the Trump administration is that Trump has gone out of his way to sort of play against that and to just like have an entirely new dynamic where it's total war against the opposition party, and you're unwilling to work with even your own Congress. What MTG is saying is that she's not a Democrat. That is true. What she's saying is that she wants there to be a new political paradigm where there's a populist right and a populist left, and they work together. Again, they have difference in views, they have difference in principles, and they will act differently when it comes to key policy. But they're people who are on the same team of America first, or whatever the hell. But it doesn't mean that she's a Democrat. It doesn't mean she's trying to be a Democrat. It's just that she wants to reorient the politics. And this is the way she's trying to tell people that she's doing that, but without saying that. It's sort of like bringing back the illusion of McCain-Obama, this idea where it's two honest men just with differences that was kind of shattered by the Trump coalition.
The team party jerseys, I don't want anything to do with any of them. I'm straight down the line, strictly for the American people. But it's been shocking to people, many people that voted for Donald Trump, many people that voted Republican, that they would actually follow through to try to cover up the Epstein files. And that's the part that everyone just can't even understand.
And when you read this report, it says that the vice president suggested having Tucker Carlson interview Ghislaine Maxwell to have her clear the president's name publicly. Do you think that would have been helpful had that gone forth?
Well, Tucker didn't interview Ghislaine Maxwell, did he? So, yeah, the fact that that didn't happen should speak volumes for Tucker Carlson.
No, it's because Tucker Carlson understood that aligning with the MAGA coalition and doing like a fluff interview to do propaganda for Trump and try to help quell the Epstein files would be ridiculous. It would be horrible for him because that's not the base he has right now. He has an almost anti-American base, a Russian and Qatari aligned base. So why would he ever do that? The fact that people like MTG try to spin this as being America first is disgusting. It's a lie at best, but delusional at worst.
And it also shows the lengths they were willing to go to try to find someone trustworthy to the American people to try to extend this cover-up. And the American people just aren't buying it. This has been the top issue ever since it started. It should have never been a fight. It should have been the easiest thing to happen. And I'll point something else out.
Big issue. It's such a prominent problem in the American mind because this is populist brain rot. The Epstein files do not matter. Was this guy a creep? Was there corruption? Was there weirdness? Of course. But those parts aren't even being talked about. It's this illusion of like a sex cult that doesn't seem to have existed really. He seemed to be an escort, purveyor. Disgusting, bad, and it should be investigated. But this grand conspiracy is insane. And the fact that the average voter cares so much about it, it speaks volumes to the sort of media environment and dynamic that's been enabled by everyone, not just the right, but also the left.
No one has been held accountable for the Epstein files. Nobody. In other countries, there's people that have been...
Part of the reason why is because Jeffrey Epstein is dead. It's hard to prosecute co-conspirators when the conspirator is dead.
Arrested, people that have been forced to step down. Here in America, we haven't seen any justice for the victims. And that's because look who's in charge. They're not being prosecuted. They're not being held accountable. And I think that comes from the top.
I mean, it ended up being Todd Blanche who interviewed Ghislaine Maxwell. She was subsequently moved to a lower security prison. He's now been named as the Attorney General. If you were in the Senate, would you vote to confirm him based on this?
Well, you know, he's the acting Attorney General, and the fact
God willing, this kind of person will never be able to ascend to the Senate.
that she was moved, Ghislaine Maxwell, just to be specific, was moved to a minimum or a lesser secure prison, a more comfortable prison. That was something that I remember the Epstein victims saying upset them greatly, because they said that she was responsible for a lot of the crimes committed against them. So they were appalled by that. But I'm not in the Senate. I don't get to make that vote.
You mentioned the discharge petition, the reason that these Epstein files...
Again, you can see even when she's distancing herself from Trump, she's still careful. You know, if you're, like, the question wasn't, well, are you in the Senate? No, it's if you were, how would you vote? The fact that she is avoiding that question by saying that, it speaks volumes to how, you know, she's willing to throw Trump and some of the people in his cabinet under the bus, but she is still trying to stay ingratiated to the GOP machine, the Republican Party itself, because she wants to re-enter. She wants to do a probably presidential run. You know, that's what's going on here.
Did get released, and it's only because of the efforts of a few of you on Capitol Hill who initially led this. Last night, Nancy Mace lost her race. She was running for governor in South Carolina in the Republican primary. But because of that means that the 4 House Republicans who backed this, you, Nancy Mace, and Thomas Massie, only Lauren Boebert is going to be in Congress for the Republicans after this term. What do you think the impact of that is?
They're thinking long term.
Well, let's also make it very clear. Lauren Boebert, the president, also put out a Truth Social saying who could he support and primary her. So she's not out of the crosshairs either. I think what MAGA needs to realize and wake up and see very clearly is President Trump hasn't brought any accountability against any of the Democrats.
Again, like, this is a delusion. What MAGA needs to see and realize, MAGA is Trump. There is no MAGA without Trump. Once Trump is gone, it is dissolved. This delusion of like it's not to say there couldn't be another right-wing populist movement, but MAGA is Trump. That's all it is. It's nothing more than that. And the fact you think that they can break with Trump in a significant way, it means you don't understand or are delusional about what MAGA is.
That he campaigned and went so hard against. None of the Democrats on the January 6th committee have been held accountable. No one has been prosecuted for the stolen election of 2020. No one has been held accountable for all the crimes against humanity, for COVID. No.
Notice how CNN, by the way, is just platforming this sort of speech with no backlash at all because she's critical against Trump here. They might give like a softball like, well, actually, but let's see, actually.
No one has been held accountable for all of these issues, but he has targeted 4 Republicans harder than he has ever come against any Democrat, and that's myself, Thomas Massie, Nancy Mace, and Lauren Boebert. Why? Because we fought to release the Epstein files. And I think that is the story that people need to pay attention to, because that tells more truth about Donald Trump than it will ever tell you on Truth Social.
When you left Congress...
Like, what's the point of having CNN? What is the point of having a liberal mainstream media space if you can just invite on Republicans to spew the most vile garbage, like the idea that the January 6th committee needs to be held accountable, not that there should be consequences for Trump pardoning people who beat cops as they rioted in our Capitol and tried to overthrow an election. It's just absurd. But this would never happen on Fox News. You'd never have a Democrat be allowed to say, even if they're legitimate, Democrat talking points with no pushback. It just wouldn't happen. But in this softball interview, because she's vaguely against Trump, she's vaguely against, and again, just Trump, not the movement he represents, just Trump. She's openly in support of the movement. Trump, like, for all the bad things Trump is, the worst part is that he uplifts really awful ideology in the party that should have been suppressed. That ideology is embodied by people like MTG. So the notion that like there's anything positive to this person being here because she's anti-Trump when she's pro all of the bad things that Trump is giving life to, like, this is disgusting. And again, it begs the question, what's the point of even having a news network like this? Maybe it should just be dissolved. Maybe it's better the Ellisons are taking it over.
You would continue to fight for what you've described as the America First agenda. You've released a new trailer for a show that is titled Life with MTG.
The people in this
and now we give her an ad. Awesome.
country are what matters. I won't stop living, I won't stop speaking, and I won't stop fighting. And neither should you.
What do you have planned?
Well, I'm very excited to roll out this series.
Her plan is to make money from this show.
It's going to show everything from how I live my life. I'm very transparent about that. And it's going to be all types of things. But I'm also going to continue to speak openly, truthfully, and passionately about the issues that matter most to Americans. And this is the direction that our country needs to go in. We have a future ahead of us, and the older generations do not need to be in charge of it. Because the way they have voted for foreign wars. They have put all of us, the younger generations, in debt to nearly $40 trillion. They have destroyed Social Security.
Again, like there is no party willing to deal with the debt, and if it's anyone, it's Democrats. Like, and the joke too of like trying to conflate debt with the foreign wars thing. Debt is primarily from Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, which Republicans want to cut without addressing in any meaningful way, while also cutting taxes. Like Trump cut taxes, and all Republicans want to cut taxes, or at least at the party level, while also cutting Medicare, Medicaid to basically the point where they're still going to be the same debt problem because they're not cutting and then cutting. They're just cutting and then not cutting enough. Like this is just, again, what's the point of this platform?
So much.
What's the point of this news station?
None of us will get a check, Caitlin. Me and you, we won't see a Social Security check because it's going to be bankrupt by 2032. And so I care very much about my children's generation.
It's more complicated than that, but it's the checks will be reduced if there is not course correction in the near future. But there's plenty of time and ability. Again, rolling back the Trump tax cuts would be enough to fund Social Security well into the future.
They're in their 20s. I care very much about the future of our country, and I care very much about...
Mind you, she's saying she cares about the future of our country. She supported the Trump tax cuts, and she supported the reaffirming of the Trump tax cuts.
Our country's standing in the entire world. And right now, our relationships are being destroyed and ruined with many countries across the world. So we have a future ahead of us, but those in their 80s and those moving up very late in age that are clinging to power in Washington, D.C., those are the ones that need to stop being in charge. And it's the younger generation. We need to lead the way.
I mean, again, it's repulsive, but it shows like CNN is in bed with people like this. This is a positive platforming. This is a friendly platforming. No pushback, no critical questions, nothing. But it's because the left is moving towards this. The left is trying to embrace this populist faction because they see it as a way to disenfranchise Trump. Because Trump, for them, the problem with him is that he's a part of the billionaire class. It has nothing to do with Trump's misdeeds, his immorality, his platforming of horrific policy. It's almost exclusively because he represents the modern day robber baron. And they see MTG as an antidote to that. They see her as a suitable replacement for the Republican Party. But guess what? I would take robber barons or bad versions of robber barons any day over anti-vaxxers, over people who want to get rid of property tax, over people who want to employ the dumbest ideas we've ever heard of into Congress, into our federal legislation. But CNN is okay with this sort of stuff just flying because the left is okay with it. And that's the way we're moving. And, you know, it has to be fought against. You have to figure out a way to get rid of this populist brain rot. But, yep, anyway, agree, disagree, let me know, please. And, yeah, we'll see you in the next video. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.